A massive storm is coming to the United States over the next couple of days, and this is going to bring a ton of problems, including the risk of significant severe weather, which includes damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes. In addition to that, a big blizzard is going to be coming to areas like the Central Plains and the Midwest. Significant fire conditions are expected over the next couple of days, and a widespread swath of 30 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts will be impacting areas from the Great Plains back through the East Coast. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about this big storm that is coming to the United States in extreme detail. We'll begin with what's happening across the country right now, and we already have our big storm system just sitting over the Rocky Mountains this afternoon, and there's a lot of moisture coming out of both the Pacific Ocean and as well as back over in the Gulf, and we are anticipating a significant risk of severe weather tonight, which is going to roll all the way through Wednesday. So we got a long stretch of severe weather ahead. This storm is also one of the strongest that we've seen all year long. It'll get down to around 980 millibars of pressure, which means this could be one of the strongest storm systems we've ever seen in March in the United States when it comes to barometric pressure. We have a lot of stuff to talk about in this forecast. We're going to begin with the severe weather potential for the next few days. There have been some changes to the forecast. To begin with, tonight, there is a significant risk of severe weather across the central and southern plains. Marginal threat goes all the way up into Iowa, back into Texas. Enhanced risk in place now for central and southern Oklahoma, and as well as parts of North Texas. I do think we'll be live tonight covering this, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Start time probably around 10 to 11 o'clock tonight, as this is more geared towards a nocturnal tornado threat and as well as a wind threat. Slight risk also goes back up into Kansas. Here's the main concern for tonight. It will be damaging winds across parts of Oklahoma and Texas, as we are anticipating a line of storms to upscale very quickly across both Oklahoma and Texas, but there is also a chance for a few tornadoes. We may even see an isolated strong tornado if a discrete supercell is able to get going quick enough. This environment is very favorable for tornadoes if any discrete cells fire. Now, here's the thing. I think this is mostly going to be a line of thunderstorms. If this storm system was even 6 hours faster, this would more than likely be a substantial tornado outbreak. The good news is that we anticipate this to mostly be a line of thunderstorms, which would limit the significant tornado risk. However, there will still be numerous damaging winds in addition to at least a few tornadoes tonight into early tomorrow morning in Kansas, Oklahoma, and as well as back over into Texas. Now, once we go into tomorrow, the risk of severe weather is massive. We are talking about a large area from Kansas and Missouri all the way back into Florida. We do have now a much larger enhanced risk of severe weather from Alabama back into Oklahoma and Texas, where significant damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes are all in play. We even have a slight risk back up into parts of Tennessee. One of the things that we've been noticing again over the last couple of days is that there will not be nearly as much instability back up here into parts of the lower Midwest and even into the Central Plains. So that'll limit the severe weather potential a little bit, but I am eyeing a cold core tornado setup back over in western Missouri tomorrow afternoon, where we might see an isolated tornado or two. Very high chance that we'll also be live at some point tomorrow. It's going to depend on how late tonight's live stream goes. So if it's late, then this live stream might be a bit delayed, but I do anticipate being live for most of tomorrow. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Another significant severe weather day ahead. For right now, the main concern is damaging winds. We do have a hatched area in Louisiana and as well as Mississippi for this tossing trampolines on Tacos Tuesday. I would anticipate some flying trampolines, as damaging winds could be as high as 80 miles per hour in that area. But elsewhere, we're still talking about at least isolated to scattered damaging winds between 60 to 70 miles per hour. And then the tornado risk again is elevated. We now have a hatched tornado risk in place across Louisiana, parts of Arkansas, Mississippi, and also into southern Alabama, where a strong tornado or two are possible. I would say this is a relatively conditional risk here for strong tornadoes. I generally think tomorrow we're going to probably at least see a few tornadoes, but the strong tornado potential is definitely a bit more conditional on any discrete supercells firing. We have a very small warm sector tomorrow, which means there's very little space to work with for these storms. So generally speaking, this should be a relatively conditional strong tornado threat. We could still see tornadoes once again anywhere from Georgia back into Missouri. The risk is a bit lower, but it's definitely not zero. If for some reason that little cold core tornado threat uptrends a little bit, wouldn't be surprised if a small 5% tornado risk is added to western or even central Missouri. And while all this is happening tomorrow, we also have a significant fire threat in Texas. We have high winds mixed with really low moisture across many areas in South and West Texas, which will spark at least a few fires, we think, tomorrow, with an extremely critical condition in place across South Texas. That is the highest risk, by the way, on the fire weather scale. So make sure that you are not lighting any fires tomorrow across Texas, as it will be very windy and as well as very dry. Our severe weather potential continues as we go into Wednesday, mostly across the East Coast. Coast. Notice how we have a marginal threat from even Lake Erie all the way back down into Florida. We could be talking about damaging winds, some hail, and also a few tornadoes across this entire region. Couple areas where I think the maximum of this tornado risk will be. I think we have a better shot of at least a conditional tornado risk during the afternoon hours on Wednesday from Ohio back into Maryland and as well as Delaware, and also back over North Carolina and South Carolina during the afternoon. There is a conditional risk here for a few tornadoes, maybe even an isolated strong tornado. It's going to be very close though. It's going to depend on the timing of this trough. For now, I think most of those significant storms are going to be offshore of North Carolina, but if that does change, we will let you know in tomorrow morning's video if we have one. If we don't have one, we'll definitely have one on Wednesday. And then back over in Florida, mainly an isolated wind risk, maybe a brief tornado during the morning into the early afternoon on Wednesday. Tonight's tornado risk has been increasing throughout the day today. This is what it looks like tonight on the tornado parameter values, right around 7 to 8 o'clock. Notice how we have very high values here. All that pink is very high tornado parameter values, which basically means we have a very favorable environment for tornadoes in western Oklahoma. Here's the thing. Storms are not expected to fire off till about 10 or 11 o'clock Central Time, which means that this environment won't be used. But even by around 10 to 11 o'clock tonight, notice how we still have very high values across western Oklahoma and as well as back into Texas, which means if any discrete cells or any really surface-based storms in general fire off along this frontal boundary tonight, we are going to be talking about the potential for an isolated strong tornado initially, but I still think a few tornadoes, no matter what, are going to be possible as we have a lot of wind shear and as well as a good amount of instability. I would say the biggest question for the setup is, are these storms going to remain surface-based, and will they start as surface-based as we get closer to 10 to 11 o'clock tonight? If they do, tornado threat is definitely going to be more elevated in western and central Oklahoma. These values do remain high. Even past midnight tonight, we still have a chance for a few tornadoes. I think our greatest concern tonight will be in central, southern, and western Oklahoma. There is a chance in North Texas, but I think there's going to be a lot more storm activity here, which is going to lead to a less favorable setup. Despite these numbers being very high, I just don't think we're going to have as favorable of a setup in North Texas. However, even during the overnight hours, we could see a tornado or two and at least some damaging winds. So have multiple ways to receive alerts and a tornado action plan in place anywhere in this area tonight. And I also plan on being live on the channel tonight starting around 10 to 11 o'clock. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon down below so you're notified if and when we do go live. And then eventually, as we go into tomorrow morning, the tornado risk will be lower, but it will still exist back over in East Texas and eventually into Louisiana as we get closer to lunchtime tomorrow. And the tornado risk will start to kick back up again as we go into the early to mid-afternoon in the lower Mississippi River Valley, mainly in eastern Louisiana and southern Mississippi. And while that's happening, there will also be a cold core tornado setup back up in Missouri. It's a conditional tornado risk, but a tornado or two will be possible during the mid to late afternoon tomorrow. Again, there's a good chance we'll be live when that's happening, while the Gulf Coast storms are also happening. And then a little after sunset tomorrow night, we're talking more about a tornado risk that's confined to the Gulf Coast. And then as we go into the late nighttime hours, that tornado risk will continue to move into the southeast, mainly impacting areas like Florida and as well as Alabama. But notice how the amount of wind shear and as well as the instability will be much lower by then back over in southeastern Alabama and Florida, before eventually we're watching more for the tornado risk as we go into Wednesday across areas like the Carolinas, Virginia, and even back up closer to Maryland. Now let's talk more about the timing for severe weather tonight. This is what it looks like right around 9 o'clock tonight. Really not much out there around 9, but by 10 to 11, that's when we're anticipating a line of thunderstorms to quickly form back over in western Oklahoma and southern Kansas. And this is where we're going to be watching for the initial threat of damaging winds. But again, if any storms are surface-based and if they are discrete or even semi-discrete, I would not rule out a strong tornado tonight. It's not impossible. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it is definitely a possibility here back over in western Oklahoma. By around 11 to 12 o'clock tonight, this line of storms continues to quickly move east, mainly as a wind risk, but again, embedded tornadoes in the line are very possible. As we get closer to midnight and just after midnight tonight, this line continues to push east. It'll be moving through the Oklahoma City metro, I think, right around 1 to 2 a.m. tonight. And further south, there will be a cap in place until about 1 to 2 a.m. tonight. And eventually, once that is eroded, we are anticipating storms to fire up back over near Abilene and as well as Wichita Falls in Texas. By around 4 o'clock tonight, this line of storms continues to push east. If we end up seeing any sort of storms that form out in front of this line, those are going to be the ones that also could produce a potential for a more elevated tornado risk. Another thing we need to watch for overnight tonight, the line of storms will be moving into the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex around 4 to 5 o'clock, and then eventually right around 7, 8 in the morning, this line is very messy across eastern Oklahoma and western Arkansas with mostly a wind threat. And then once we go into tomorrow afternoon, our tornado risk will start to increase again back over in the deep south. For now, it does not honestly look very impressive, but it could definitely trend in the negative direction, meaning meaning we could end up actually seeing a more favorable environment by tomorrow for tornadoes. But I'll be honest, it does not look overly impressive to me as of right now. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be prepared. Make sure you have a tornado action plan ready to go in multiple ways to receive alerts. And if for some reason it starts trending in the wrong direction, we are obviously going to be live tomorrow. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel as long as this risk actually does transpire. And then eventually these storms are moving into the southeast as we go into late Tuesday evening. This is what it looks like back over in Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. As we go closer to midnight tomorrow, notice how a line of storms will be pushing through these states. Again, not overly organized, but some damaging winds and a couple of tornadoes will still be a possibility. And then by Wednesday morning, it's a very weak line of thunderstorms, and it will eventually upscale a little bit as we go into the afternoon hours tomorrow, mainly back up into the Carolinas and also back into Virginia. But for the time being, the severe weather risk is definitely on the lower side if you are in Florida or Georgia for Wednesday. And then back over in the mid-Atlantic and the Ohio Valley on Wednesday, our tornado risk is definitely on the lower side compared to the days that we're talking about, which is today and tomorrow. But we still have a chance for a couple of tornadoes. The environment will have enough wind shear and as well as enough instability during the afternoon for an isolated tornado or two as some storms will try to fire up here. And also, I did point this out a little while ago, but we might see a couple of discrete supercells that fire off, maybe in very far southeastern North Carolina. For now, the NAM model here is showing that the majority of that energy, where the strongest wind shear is going to be offshore. And if that's the case, I don't think we're going to be talking about much of a strong tornado threat in North Carolina. But if for some reason this trough is a little bit slower than forecasted, we definitely could see some changes to the forecast, as that's not very far away here from being in North Carolina. So definitely something to watch for. I think the afternoon into the very, very early evening hours will be the main time frame to watch for a tornado risk in Virginia, North Carolina, and really anywhere in the Ohio Valley and the mid-Atlantic region. So this is what it looks like around lunchtime, a relatively weak line of storms moving through, and then eventually as we go into the early to mid-afternoon hours, the threat of severe weather a bit more elevated here right along the coastal region of North Carolina. And then we'll also be watching for some storms to fire up back behind that line around 3 to 4 o'clock, and those ones will have a chance of also producing some damaging winds, isolated hail, and then also an isolated tornado threat. And then as we go into the evening hours, this threat of severe weather is diminishing. So really the main time frame to watch for would be from about 12 to about 7 o'clock here in the Ohio Valley in the mid-Atlantic. There are so many things to talk about in this forecast. We also have to talk about the winter storm threat, and as well as the very high winds that are going to be coming from the backside of this particular storm system. This is what it looks like as we go into late tomorrow night and into early Wednesday morning. This will actually be one of the strongest low pressure systems we've ever seen in the month of March in the Midwest. This will actually challenge records. I'm not even kidding. One of the strongest low pressure systems for March in the United States. Very heavy snowfall is likely from Kansas City back into Wisconsin and as well as the upper peninsula of Michigan as we go into Wednesday morning. This snow will continue into Wednesday afternoon, but it'll be lighter in the Midwest. We are anticipating blizzard conditions to be a possibility from the Central Plains back into the Midwest, both Wednesday and into early Thursday. Blowing snow, drifting, all a possibility. Very low visibility on the roadways. And then eventually that moves into the Northeast, and then we may also see another winter weather event try to take place as we go into Friday and into Saturday. The European model does not have much confidence of that developing. The GFS model is showing a full-blown winter storm in parts of the Ohio Valley and into the Northeast. A little uncertain as of right now. We'll have another update tomorrow or Wednesday talking more about that. And then as we go into next week, things are going to be a little bit quieter, I think, to start. It'll probably get more active, though, as we get closer to the middle of March. So in terms of snowfall accumulation, the majority of areas in the upper Midwest will pick up between 2 to 5 inches of snow. The upper peninsula of Michigan could get as much as 8 inches of snowfall in some spots, which again, blizzard conditions are likely as long as snow does end up accumulating. And then back over in the Central Plains, a widespread coating to 3 to 4 inches as possible. I do want to point this out. Kansas City is going to be seeing a mix of severe weather in addition to high winds and also the potential for snow all within 24 hours. It is actually crazy what's happening there. We got drunk weather back over in Kansas City. In addition to that, we also have a potential for high winds as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday. This is what it looks like Tuesday afternoon. The wind's really going to ramp up here across the high plains, anywhere from Nebraska back into West Texas. Wind gusts as high as 70 miles per hour back over in the Oklahoma Panhandle and as well as the Texas Panhandle. Dust is definitely going to be blowing out there, in addition to the elevated potential for wildfires. 55 mile per hour wind gusts could spread wildfires very quickly back over in parts of central and southern Texas during the daytime on Tuesday. Even into Tuesday night and early Wednesday morning, the winds are going to stay high back over into the Ohio Valley, the Southeast, and as well as the Midwest. Widespread area of 30 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts is ahead with this storm system. Again, this is one of the biggest storms that we've seen all year for sure. More than likely the strongest one that we've seen as well when it comes to barometric pressure. And behind all of this, we also have a big shot of cold air that'll be moving across the Midwest Midwest and the East Coast as we go into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. This is by no means what we saw in February, but definitely still some cold weather. By the weekend, temperatures will start to be back on the rise, and then we may get another sharp area of cold air as we go into Sunday, back over into the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. This is contingent on us having a strong storm system. We're going to talk more about this in a future video. Too much uncertainty as of right now, but we may be talking about a big storm as we go into Saturday and Sunday that begins back over in the southeast and as well as the Ohio Valley and moves into the northeast. Could be a big snowmaker, but again, just too much uncertainty right now for that storm system. And then by next week, things are a bit quieter for the first half of the week, which I think all of us can agree we need some quieter weather after all the crazy weather that we've had all year round. I just want to point this out. This was one of the longest videos we've ever had on this channel at a whopping 16 minutes. If you do enjoy these types of longer and more detailed forecasts, definitely let me know down in the comments below. I usually do not go over 10 minutes, and we went to 16 minutes. There's just so much stuff to talk about with this big storm system. We will probably have another video tomorrow morning. If we don't, though, for some reason, our next one will be Wednesday. We plan on being live tonight. We'll probably be live tomorrow, and we'll probably be live on Wednesday, honestly, at this rate. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Click the bell icon down below so you're notified as well whenever we do go live. Also, a reminder, if you want to get any 1 million subscriber merch, that is available at shopmaxvelocity.net. We have sign hats, t-shirts, mugs, and stickers all available. Again, that's the top link in the description below or at shopmaxvelocity.net.